Welcome back to the History Podcast. I'm Jason Thomason. In this series, we're exploring the rise and fall of the Assyrian Empire, one of the most formidable powers the ancient world ever knew. In our last episode, we traced Assyria's path from survival to expansion, as kings like Sennacherib II forged a culture of conquest and brutality that defined their state. Today we move into the empire's golden age, when Assyria reached the very height of its power. From the reign of Tiglath-Pileser III in the 8th century BCE, through the campaigns of Sargon II, and the dominance of Sennacherib, Assyria became the superpower of the Near East. It controlled lands from the Persian Gulf to Egypt, from the mountains of Iran to the Mediterranean Sea. This was the Assyrian war machine at full throttle. The turning point came with Tiglath-Pileser III, who reigned from 745 to 727 BCE. Before him, Assyria had grown strong but was facing instability. Provinces were rebelling, and neighboring states like the Urartu in Anatolia were pressing against Assyrian borders. Tiglath-Pileser launched sweeping reforms. He reorganized the military into a standing army, something rare in the ancient world. Soldiers were now recruited not just from Assyria, but from across conquered territories, giving the empire a massive pool of manpower. He also created specialized units: cavalry, siege engineers, and archers. This made the Assyrian army flexible and deadly. Their siege techniques, battering rams, sappers tunneling under walls and towers, were the most advanced of their time. Campaign after campaign expanded Assyrian control into Assyria, down into Israel and Judah, and against Babylon, where Tiglath-Pileser placed himself as king. His conquest transformed Assyria into the first true empire in history, with provinces directly ruled by governors loyal to the king. But Tiglath-Pileser's reforms weren't just military. He strengthened provincial administration, appointed loyal governors, and installed vassal kings in strategic regions, reducing rebellion and improving centralized control. Like his predecessors, he commissioned inscriptions and reliefs depicting his victories, a deliberate form of propaganda. By displaying conquest through art, he reinforced both fear and loyalty. As we mentioned in the previous episode, these reliefs showed kings hunting lions, deporting captives, and performing religious rituals before Ashur, emphasizing divine sanction. Tiglath-Pileser also invested in infrastructure and logistics. He maintained staging areas, stockpiles of food and weapons, and a network of roads connecting provinces, allowing armies to march efficiently and supply lines to remain strong. Iron weapons, chariots, and specialized siege equipment made the Assyrian army technologically advanced for its time. Daily life under Tiglath-Pileser was closely tied to the empire's military and administrative systems. Farmers paid tribute. Craftsmen supplied weapons and goods. And scribes recorded every transaction. The empire relied on a literate bureaucracy, which also facilitated communication across thousands of miles. Tiglath-Pileser was succeeded by his son, Shalmaneser V, but his reign was short. In 722 BCE, Sargon II seized power, possibly through a coup. Sargon's reign from 722 to 705 BCE was marked by constant warfare and grand ambitions. He conquered the kingdom of Israel, deporting much of its population in what the Bible calls the exile of the 10 lost tribes. Deportation was a deliberate Assyrian policy, moving conquered peoples to break their resistance and to repopulate other parts of the empire. Sargon also waged war against Urartu, against Elam to the southeast, and even against Phrygia in Anatolia. His empire stretched farther than any before him. To showcase his power, Sargon began building a brand new capital, Dur-Sharrukin, the fortress of Sargon, near modern-day Khorzabad in Iraq. This city featured massive palaces, reliefs depicting Assyrian victories, and colossal lamassu. Though Sargon died in battle before completing it, Dur-Sharrukin symbolized the empire's wealth and artistic achievements. Dur-Sharrukin's city layout was also symbolic, designed to reflect cosmic order. Streets, temples, and the king's palace were arranged to demonstrate Assyria's power and divine favor. For Sargon, building this city was as much about consolidating legitimacy after seizing the throne as it was about extravagance. The city also functioned as an administrative hub, with archives, workshops, and military barracks supporting governance and cultural life. The city was bustling. Merchants sold goods from across the empire. Scribes recorded transactions and laws. And artisans carved intricate reliefs. It demonstrated not only military dominance, but also Assyria's sophistication in governance, engineering, and culture. Sargon's son, Sennacherib, took the throne in 705 BCE. His reign is one of the most famous in Assyrian history. Sennacherib shifted the capital to Nineveh, transforming it into a magnificent metropolis with gardens, canals, and walls so massive that later writers claimed 3 chariots could ride side by side atop them. He also built large aqueducts and canals, demonstrating that Assyrian power combined military might with engineering skill. Militarily, Sennacherib is remembered for his brutal campaigns. In 701 BCE, he marched into the Levant to suppress a rebellion led by Hezekiah, king of Judah. According to Assyrian inscriptions, Sennacherib besieged Jerusalem and shut up Hezekiah like a bird in a cage. The Hebrew Bible tells the story differently. In 2 Kings 19, it claims that an angel of the Lord struck down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. Some historians believe Jerusalem was spared not by divine intervention, but by diplomacy and tribute payments. Still, the clash between biblical and Assyrian accounts has fascinated scholars for centuries. Sennacherib also waged devastating wars against Babylon, ultimately destroying the city in 689 BCE, a shocking act given Babylon's religious prestige. He claimed Marduk's temple was desecrated and carted off its statue of the god. This act would later haunt Assyria, leaving lasting resentment in the south. Religiously, Sennacherib portrayed himself as the chosen agent of Ashur, and he incorporated local deities of conquered lands into his administration, reinforcing control with respecting tradition. Religion and propaganda were inseparable from Assyria's military campaigns. Rituals, temple offerings, and annual festivals showcased the king's divine role, legitimizing conquest. But Sennacherib's story did not end in triumph. According to both Assyrian and biblical accounts, his rule ended in blood. In 681 BCE, while praying in the temple of Ninurta, Sennacherib was assassinated, cut down by his own two sons, Adremelech and Sharezer. They struck him down with the sword, then fled the empire, leaving the throne to their brother Esarhaddon. Some say it was vengeance for Babylon's destruction, others a bitter struggle for secession. Whatever the cause, the king who had unleashed terror across empires met his end at the hands of his own blood. His death sent shockwaves through Assyria, a grim reminder that even the mightiest kings were not immune to the violence they themselves had sown. By the early 7th century BCE, under kings like Esarhaddon and Ashurbanipal, Assyria stood at its zenith. Esarhaddon conquered Egypt in 671 BCE, briefly extending Assyrian rule to the Nile. Ashurbanipal, ruling from 668 to 627 BCE, presided over an empire stretching thousands of miles. He also built the Great Library of Nineveh, gathering thousands of tablets covering literature, science, religion, medicine, and astronomy. Thanks to him, we have texts like the Epic of Gilgamesh preserved. The empire's wealth allowed artisans, scribes, and merchants to flourish. Nineveh was a hub of economic activity, with bustling markets, workshops, and administrative offices. Farmers and laborers supported cities through tribute, while scribes maintained records of population, taxation, and trade, essential for controlling such a vast empire. Even at its peak, political intrigue simmered. Court rivalries, succession disputes, and ambitious generals were constant challenges. Kings needed vigilance, military prowess, and clever diplomacy to hold the empire together. Yet Assyria's achievements were extraordinary: unparalleled military organization, administrative innovation, monumental architecture, sophisticated art, and literary preservation. The empire was a model of power and organization unmatched in its time. So, in this episode, we've seen Assyria at the height of its glory, the military revolution of Tiglath-Pileser III, the expansion and propaganda of Sargon II, the campaigns of Sennacherib, and the cultural achievements of Ashurbanipal. The Assyrian war machine had created the most powerful empire the world had ever seen. Ordinary people labored. Artisans carved reliefs. Scribes recorded history, and soldiers enforced control, all contributing to the empire's might. But as we'll discover in our final episode, empires that rise so high often fall just as dramatically. Assyria's dominance would not last forever. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time.